I'm Ashton Addison from the Crypto Coin Show. Today on Blockchain Interviews, we have David Johnston of Morpheus to talk about decentralized AI, decentralized networks in general, Ether, staking your Ether in a decentralized way, and much, much more. David, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Ashton. Good to be here. Excited to nerd out on decentralized AI.
Definitely. I feel like people don't understand how important it is, especially with the rise of AI and everyone that's not even involved in crypto using AI, not understanding who they're really talking to, where that information is going. And I know that you have some insights into that we can dive into today. Maybe you want to briefly discuss, why this is important to you and sort of how your journey from crypto in the beginning, which I know it's a long journey, you've been a veteran in the space, how that led into focusing on decentralized AI right now.
Well, interestingly enough, I actually was in AI back in 2011 and realized I was way too early in that trend. This is like pre-transformers, before the big ChatGPT breakout. And, I could see that there was going to be this cool opportunity where AI could benefit me personally, but the tools weren't there in 2012. And so I decided to focus full time on Bitcoin, later Ethereum, and basically spent the last 12 years in crypto. Wrote the paper on decentralized applications, sort of created that framework for dApps back in 2013. And then I've tried to push freedom tech up the stack from the protocol level more towards the application layer, where people can actually touch it so that we don't have to have centralized companies running these decentralized systems, right? I really want decentralization to reach the user all the way at the application layer. So that's been sort of my last 12 years, is helping different projects push that forward. And I looked up in 2022 and it was like, oh, wow, finally the things we were dreaming about in 2012 are a reality in 22. And so I started to think, how can I connect crypto and AI? And so I started writing papers. Hey, I should be able to use my Web3 wallet and connect it to my personal agent. That way, if it's not your keys, it's not your AI. And so I think people are going to understand that over time, just like they understand that for crypto. I started writing about it, talking to people. And then I read the Morpheus paper in September of 23 after the Anons published it. And I was like, wow, yeah, this is what needs to exist, right? Not just a local version, but one where I can access GPUs from all over the world, where the memory and the context are persistent, right? Where I can get all of the benefits of a huge network effect, but root that in the individual. So that really inspired me. And I started talking to Eric Voorhees and other people that I'd worked with the last 10 years in the industry. And I was like, decentralized intelligence, like this is going to be just as important as decentralizing money. And in late 2013, people started to come to that conclusion, or late 2023, people started to come to that conclusion, and it really sort of took off. And this idea of decentralized AI, we held a summit in Austin and one in San Francisco and Singapore and Denver, and we started to bring together all the people that wanted to see this technology exist. So yeah, it's been a wild couple of years.
Definitely. And now that the industry is caught up after 2022, and also AI is just breaking out into people much beyond the researchers and the crypto lovers. It's like everybody, grandmas are using it to check their recipes. And I love that analogy you gave about the not your keys, not your coins. I think people have now people, at least in crypto, have understood that there's a difference between keeping your assets on an exchange where somebody else owns it and having it on your own possession. And I feel like that analogy, it translates well to AI, but people don't really understand AI versus decentralized AI. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the potential issues with the big AI that people are using right now, and why they should probably be using decentralized AI instead.
So, I could talk about privacy. I could talk about, the importance of individual ownership, but let me ground it in something very practical. One of these is free, and the other is you're renting it from somebody else, right? So one of the breakout projects built out of the Morpheus community has been Venice. Their first breakout moment was users in Brazil realizing they could use Venice for free
Mm,
instead of paying Microsoft or OpenAI to get a beautiful chat and image generation app, right?
hmm
And so that's what resonated with people. Just the way that, Android and the open internet and Linux sort of won all those network effects over time, it's because it was free. Free as in freedom,
hmm
but also free as in free beer, right? And so, I try to bring it back to the practical because yes, it's got privacy built in, and yes, it's owned by the user. But for a lot of people, they're just looking for the zero friction solution.
hmm
And that's, I think, why we'll win because decentralized AI is for everybody and it doesn't matter where you live, right? If you're in China, you literally can't use ChatGPT, it's banned,
hmm
right? And so you're going to end up with an open source alternative because it's your only option, right?
hmm
And that's true for billions of people globally, not always because of government censorship, but because of economic reality. Like they don't have a GPU, they don't have
hmm
$300 a year to
hmm
pay OpenAI. They're going to end up using one of these free solutions. So let's make it privacy preserving, opened by the open source and owned by the user. And that becomes a really big win is now I have a personal AI for the same reasons that I wanted a personal phone or a personal laptop.
Definitely. And maybe this isn't the case with decentralized AI, but with centralized applications, there's been that saying that like the reason that it's free is because like you are the product, and the centralized companies always seem to be taking advantage of you somehow. But I feel like with the shift into decentralized networks and open source software, that sort of shifting on its head, that it can be free, but also more importantly, uh, you're not the product of somebody else.
100%. And the way that's possible is through tokenomics, right?
Mm,
Satoshi's breakthrough was to figure out how the software could pay for its own hardware. And that was the key to making a neutral platform, not owned by a company, not owned by somebody cutting the checks, but by issuing tokens to people providing the security of the network, right? To the
mm,
miners, right? And Ethereum copied that model for consensus of smart contracts. And Morpheus is using that model for smart agents, right? All of
mm,
these agents need persistent access to compute, to data storage, payment rails, like all of these
mm,
things. How do you do that? Well, Morpheus emits tokens to compute providers, to code providers, to agent builders, and to capital providers. So you're incentivizing in a decentralized way all this permanent infrastructure. So if I put an agent on Morpheus, I know it's there forever. Just like
mm.
if I published a smart contract in Ethereum, I know I can access it a year from now, 10 years from now, because this their persistent incentive. That's the key.
Definitely. And you mentioned earlier about Venice. I didn't know that it had come out of the Morpheus project, but I have used Venice as a decentralized AI LLM alternative. And in the early days, which was very cool. But I know Morpheus is a lot more than that. And you just touched on it a little bit there in that the agents and LLMs. Can you sort of give a high level for people who maybe they're not deep in crypto, but of course they've used OpenAI or one of the LLMs? Can they just go to Morpheus and use similar products for free, or what can sort of normies do?
100%. Yeah, you can just go to more.org. There's a local version that you can run. There's a chat app that you can use. You can use projects that are building on top of Morpheus,
Mm,
like Venice. Venice really leveraged Morpheus to build its initial network effect. They said if you staked a more token towards Venice, they would give you a pro account. And like the first
mm,
4,000
mm,
people that discovered Venice all came through sort of that Morpheus ecosystem of people that cared about privacy and open source, and they wanted a private alternative for images and texts. And so there's an entire ecosystem of projects, I think over 100 now, building on Morpheus. They're using it either as a payment rail or for capital formation, or they're accessing the inference for the model or the agent that they want to build. If you're a developer and you're listening to this, check out openbeta.more.org and you can get a free key and be using Llama 3.3 or whatever model you want to access inference through Morpheus. So Yeah, it's very practical. Like at this point, it's one click of a button,
Hmm.
and here's my free access to inference that the network is providing.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I know a lot of people personally who they're starting to rely more on LLMs, the centralized ones, but they're like, I don't want to pay, and it cuts them off. And then they're like, I don't want to pay, not even 300, but like $30, like and all of a sudden I'm gatekeeped from information. And I feel like they just don't know about open source alternatives because they don't have the all millions of revenue that pushes a marketing team, and there's not like a big marketing push towards open source alternatives, but more people need to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people didn't find out about Bitcoin because there was a CMO doing press
Yeah.
releases. Friends told their friends about Bitcoin because they were passionate about the idea of freedom of money, right?
Hmm.
Honest money was really powerful. And I think having a personal AI is a similar level of sort of importance,
Hmm.
and it's likely to spread organically,
Hmm.
just like Bitcoin and Ethereum did. I think actually that's more powerful
Hmm.
because people getting value out of it in their everyday life, that's the utility, that's the proof, right? And then they tell their friends and others. And so, the same way Ethereum provided all these tools for smart contract developers, Morpheus is doing that for these smart agent builders, right? Most developers don't want to run their own infrastructure or do discovery or handle payments, right? That's the
Hmm.
reason the App Store was so
Hmm.
powerful, right? Developers were literally handing over 30% of their revenue to Apple
Hmm.
just to handle infrastructure and payments and discovery. And so we need something similar for agents. And so if you can think about Morpheus in that context, a developer can publish an agent. It's there on the registry forever, right? On chain. It can use the inference, which is always available from the Morpheus marketplace, right? And it effectively is a persistent tool that you can then build on and create something that uses that agent, right? They become these
Hmm.
building blocks that compound in value over time. And I think that's really the key. Anytime you build on centralized infrastructure, they can just get rid of it, right? We
Hmm.
saw all these people that used open AI and they deprecated the models that they were using. Sorry, go
Hmm.
rebuild your app, right? Or everybody will love a particular app and then some big company buys it and they just kill
Hmm.
it, right?
Hmm.
They didn't want the app, they don't care about the users. And so it's really cool to have a community where if you build something, it sticks around and actually gets better over time, right? And you can build on it over time. I think that's really the key.
Definitely, yeah. Don't want. Same with people on YouTube or any content creators. It's like you're working, and then all of a sudden the company says, you know what, we don't like what you're saying. You're cut off. If it
Yeah.
was open source, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, sorry you spent 5 years building that audience of 100,000 people. We just deleted your account. There's no appeal. Like, deal with it, right? And it's like, what am I doing building value in these
Hmm.
centralized systems?
Definitely, and you know, you mentioned there about the smart agents, and I feel like there's a lot of people that are using LLMs, but not as many that are using smart agents or AI agents yet. And even though there's been talk about it for almost 2 years in AI agents coming into the blockchain industry and the innovators in blockchain looking for how to add value through AI agents. And I'd be curious to know, what the scope of that was back 15 years ago, when you were first looking at it. But where do you think we're at right now with not just LLMs, but actually AI agents or smart agents that can do tasks on your behalf, whether it's pay for your flight and hotel or actually respond to your email and you don't even have to look. It's just doing things for you.
So, we're really very early. The tools for agents have only really been around for the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of important standards that you should know about. MCP, Model Context Protocol or Model Communications Protocol, is one that came out of Anthropic. I think it was last November,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
very recently. And it basically gives a way for your AI, your large language model, to talk to a server, right? Because the model doesn't have all the answers,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you want to connect it to the web, if you want to connect it to Google Maps, if now there are thousands of MCP servers that have come out, it's making your AI much smarter because it's giving it all these external sources of data. So you can think of
Mm-hmm.
the large language models at this as this fundamental level. You can think of the agents as the next level above that that go and do a particular job. And then the tools that the agent is connecting to as the third level above that, right? So everybody started with chat apps, and then they could connect to external sources and run a particular fine-tuned agent. And then that agent is getting more powerful by accessing all of these tools. So that's sort of the evolution that we're seeing. If you haven't seen yet, there's an ERC in the Ethereum ecosystem called 8004, which is for trustless agents. Morpheus is contributing to that standard. And it's like, here's a registry of agents. Here's validation of those agents. Here's the reputation of those agents, and store
Mm-hmm.
all of that on chain so that when I use an agent, I have a good sense for like, is it
Mm-hmm.
reliable? Is it
Mm-hmm.
always available? Which model does it use? I need all of that information. So that only came out the last few weeks, right? So we're still very early, but already it's gone from a few dozen to a few hundred to now, I think there are like
Mm-hmm.
8,000 agents publicly published
Wow.
as MCPs. Google also released A2A, which is their agent to agent communication
Mm-hmm.
protocol. And that's an attempt to, okay, now you've got all these smart agents. I want mine to talk to yours,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I meet a bunch of people at a conference. I'm really inspired and I want to connect with them, but it's hard to keep in your mind the 10,000 people you've met the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
But if my agent could talk to theirs and I have a trusted relationship, well, yeah, I want them to know about this,
Wow.
new thing I'm building, right? All of a sudden my agent can act on my behalf
Mm-hmm.
24/7,
Mm-hmm.
365. Like we're going to laugh at the old model of work where it was
Yeah.
9 to 5, just like we laugh at the banks that
Mm-hmm.
they break every evening at 5 p.m. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
is the bank server tired? Like, why can't I use the bank after that hour? But right, that's not a problem in the crypto or on-chain context, right? So my agent, I'm experimenting right now. There's a group of open source developers that have built a project on Morpheus called FreeAI, free as in freedom, at freeai.xyz. If you go on there, you can try out personal agents right now and set up all these recurring jobs and have it do these things for you automatically. And it
Mm-hmm.
pulls from all these different agents that are publicly available. So that's just going to continue to get more and more powerful. Is my personal AI working on my behalf 24/7 based on my objectives and my goals. Like to me, that's the big payoff here. Right? Is chat is cool and
Mm-hmm.
images are great, but I want it to actually work for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I want it to work for me, not some company or some government, right? So that's the difference.
Definitely super important. And yeah, the chat has been revolutionary, but you still have to do all the manual input that you were doing before. It's definitely streamlined a lot of the operations, but if you can get rid of that input, half of the input or down to 10% of what it was before through the AI agent, understanding your needs and getting it done for you, it's like it's
Well,
going to change the game beyond what anybody is going to believe.
I mean, just to double click on that, that's the key. That's the hitting the nail on the head. Is the current AIs can give you information,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can ask them how to do something and it'll give you a 10-point list. But then you have
Mm-hmm.
to go do the things, right?
Yeah.
The evolution with Web3 and smart agents is it takes the action for you,
Mm.
right? And because it's your personal AI, it can connect directly into your apps. It can touch your keys. Morpheus has integrated the LIT protocol, which helps for
Mm.
all the cybersecurity. So
Mm.
the agent is only authorized to use a certain amount of money or a certain application or for a certain amount of time. Coinbase has done a lot of great work on this as well. They have an agent kit that
Mm.
integrates 402, their payment standards. So all those pieces are coming together. And if it's my personal agent, I'm happy to connect it to all my applications. Like, hey,
Mm.
great, like do that
Yeah.
for me, and then do that for me, right? And so that's what we're getting to is my agent passively and persistently doing work on my behalf. And that's actually I've put out recently. We should define AGI as artificially generated income.
Mm. Yeah.
That's the ultimate benchmark
Mm.
for how smart it is. not like what IQ is it and stuff like that. No, 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 no. What is it doing for me
Hmm.
practically? And I don't mean like running Fiverr jobs for randos on the internet.
Hmm.
I'm talking about doing my job, like the
Hmm.
things I need to accomplish every day. And when my agent is doing more than 51% of
Hmm.
those jobs, I'm just going to say we've reached AGI, right? Because that is the benchmark for me.
Definitely. I think that is a pretty good benchmark. And what you said there about, right now, the way that the benchmarks are with AI, I was just saying this in another conversation. They're like testing PhD physics. This AI, it has a PhD in very specific like physics and algebra and things that don't help me in my business at all. It still can't just go on my email and answer the email. I don't need to know the laws of the universe. I just need to get some work done. And I feel like
Yeah.
the metrics right now in the centralized AI are completely off whack.
Yeah. How many tokens you consume? Who cares? I want to know how many jobs it's doing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go on the freeai.xyz interface, it'll show you, it's completed 400 jobs and this many
Mm.
are recurring and done this amount of human equivalent work and the value that's created for humans. Like those are the metrics I care about
Mm.
is the outcomes, not like how it did it in the back end. Whether it used a million tokens or 10 million tokens, I don't care. Did it complete the job? And I'm doing exactly what you're describing. I've set up an
Mm-hmm.
agent to read my email every day
Mm-hmm.
and it gives me a summary of every
Mm.
message and highlights the important ones or
Mm.
upcoming events or whatever. I haven't touched my email in 6 months. Like
Amazing.
somebody says, "Oh, I sent a message." Oh, that's cool. Like, but my agent is sort of already doing those type of tasks, and yeah, it's really freeing. Like I'm spending a lot less time doing the recurring things I would normally do.
Definitely. And with that, it sounds amazing, but I think a lot of people still think, there's technical barriers to entry to get that done for them if they don't know
Mm.
coding or, they've used OpenAI, but they don't really understand AI agents. How hard is it right now, and also to where it could be in the next 6 to 12 months, in actually having everyday business people, maybe they just work at Salesforce, they want to do what you're doing with your email?
Um, I didn't have to touch any code. I didn't write any programs. I literally described in plain English, you know, uh, write me a recipe, convert it into ingredients, convert it into a shopping list, and generate it every Thursday because my wife
Mm.
wants to know exactly what to buy at Sam's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the next step is to import that into her shopping app and then actually go and automatically buy the items,
Mm.
right? Like
Mm.
that's what we're getting to. And it's getting pretty smooth, right? Are the perfect systems? No, not yet. There's definitely rough edges, like, oh, there's not an agent for this or that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're rapidly getting to the point where the agents are replacing all of the apps and the websites. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to go to your
Yeah.
website. I don't want to download your app.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to tell my agent what I'm trying to accomplish and for it to automatically grab the agent that can complete that task. So, a lot of what Morpheus is doing is the orchestration layer, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
coordinator. It knows all the agents that exist. It understands what you're trying to accomplish, and it's pulling in the agent that can complete that task. And I think as we go from hundreds to thousands to millions of publicly available agents, we'll
Mm-hmm.
cover more and more of those edge cases where, like, of course, there's an agent for that. There's an
Mm-hmm.
agent for everything. Just like you got to, there's an app for everything.
Yeah. I was actually just thinking that earlier when you were saying there's 8,000 agents, and in the App Store there's millions of apps. I'm like, there's going to be at least an agent for every app there is in the App Store right now. There's going to be millions. They might have to rename it to the Agent Store or something, because AI agents are going to be, they might even, they'll probably shift it somehow for everyday people to understand that all of this is AI powered.
Yep, 100%. So that's really exciting. And the cool thing about Morpheus is it rewards the developers, not just the capital and the compute
Mm-hmm.
providers, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what's typical in crypto is proof of stake, right? You're rewarding, people that are providing capital or proof of work. You're rewarding people that are providing compute, right? Miners. But very rarely is there a good system for rewarding a large number of
Mm-hmm.
developers.
Mm-hmm.
And so Morpheus has 48% of all its emissions set aside for developers either building the agents or creating the platform itself, right? And I haven't seen a project, honestly, since Ethereum that
Mm-hmm.
is taken so seriously rewarding engineers. Like everybody remembers the crowd sale, everybody remembers them, having GPU miners. People forget that they airdropped to every
Mm-hmm.
single engineer who contributed to the code in the Genesis block. If
Mm-hmm.
you so much as commented on the
Mm-hmm.
repository in that year and a half period, they hunted you down, got an address, and rewarded you for it, right? And that's how they won the network effect of people that wanted to build smart contracts. There are plenty of smart contract
Mm-hmm.
platforms, others that were launched before Ethereum could even
Mm-hmm.
compile,
Mm-hmm.
but they were centralized around a couple of guys at a foundation, and all the tokens were flowing to a small number of people. And so part of what inspired me when I saw the Morpheus paper is like, oh, this is the holy trinity, right? You need capital, compute, and coders, right? And that's normally the ones that's forgotten. So you look at the Morpheus builder rewards, and there's already 1.8 million more tokens. We're talking like $6-7 million in tokens staked towards all those builders creating new agents, right? And so there's a real incentive. Like
Mm-hmm.
people have to pay their bills. They're like, how do I get paid? You have to give them an easy way to support their project when they're building
Mm-hmm.
it and then receive payments from users when it launches, right? And with Morpheus, you sort of get all of that. And that's really what developers want.
Yeah, no, it's super important to go from building an app and putting it in the app store and losing 30% of your revenue to actually getting paid when there's people using it and contributing is the flip on the head that we need. And which is super important, and Ethereum is a great model for that. You also mentioned there, the other pillars like build, capital, code, and I know it's so easy. It's becoming easier and easier for people to become a developer without having to know how to code and start working on smart agents. And I encourage them to. But I also want to touch on that capital pillar because there's a lot of investors and people with passive, just ether that's laying around, probably not contributing to anything. And I know that they can also contribute to this and earn. And I know there's been hundreds of thousands of ether that have gone in through the Morpheus contract as well, which is like hundreds of millions of dollars. Can you talk a little bit about the capital side and how people can contribute sort of passively?
Sure. This is also one of the things I really liked about the Morpheus model is they proposed this fair launch where there was no pre-mine, there are no founders, right? All of the tokens that exist were earned by people that contributed to Morpheus. And a lot of people hold Ethereum, and it's like, yeah, I want to stake it towards an open source project, but they don't want to lose their ETH,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what this created was a non-custodial way to contribute your ETH, lock it in the contract, and only donate the yield portion to the open source, right? And so you could always withdraw your ETH. And then, yeah, it's crazy. Over $3 billion has gone through the Morpheus smart contracts in the form of Ethereum. And these are people depositing the ETH, right? They're using Lido staked ETH. So it's generating 2 or 3% a year in validator rewards. And it's only directing that yield into the project, right? And the cool thing about that is I have the same number of ETH I started with.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm earning this additional token. I might as well stake it towards an open source project. And what we discovered is about 70% of people were not already staking. This gave them a reason to stake their token because I can see on chain that it went from unstaked to the Lido contract to the Morpheus contract, right? So they didn't have a reason to stake before. Maybe the interest wasn't high enough. They didn't really care. But all of a sudden they could support a cool project. It gave them a reason to stake and then donate that stake. So every day, based on the amount of yield that's contributed, people are competing to provide yield to Morpheus, right? And that's a really clever mechanism and goes on for the entire, history of Morpheus. The next 1,000 years, this competition will never end, right? So it's not like a token sale that, oh, I missed out. Like
Mm-hmm.
you could deposit staked ETH on more.org today and
Mm-hmm.
start competing to earn those more tokens, right? And the really cool thing is this is about to expand to Bitcoin. This is about to
Mm,
expand to stable coins. There's a version 2 of the smart contracts the community's been working on, and it just passed its final audit. It looks like it's just about ready to deploy. So that's an integration with Aave, and that's going to
mm,
be really compelling because it also moves you past the single point of failure, right? Lido's been
mm,
great, but you
mm,
don't want a single way, to
mm,
contribute capital, right?
mm,
And you want people to be able to choose their long-term holdings. Like if they believe in Bitcoin, great,
mm,
put it on Aave and provide the yield into Morpheus. If you want to hold stable coins, you think it's going to go into a bear market, great, hold stable
mm.
coins, stake it and provide that into Morpheus. So it's really opening it up to a couple of $1 trillion of additional capital that can now participate, right? Not just people that are bullish on the long-term price of ETH, which has been a great place to start, but Morpheus is agnostic. It ought to be multi-chain, it ought to be multi-yield. It is a neutral platform for anybody to use. And that's part of why I like that there is no foundation and there is no company and there is no founder, because this is owned by the community. People can make it whatever they want.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to see, and I've seen a lot of community projects, and with like no sort of leadership, but also just like no traction because they're just saying like let's just make a DAO and everyone will get one vote, but nobody can agree on anything, and we haven't really built anything yet. So it's really nice to see projects that have like there's already been billions through the contract and working on something as important as decentralized AI and AI agents so early on with great visionaries helping like yourself, and now expanding out beyond Ethereum to other assets. I feel like Bitcoin institutions and major investors they're just opening their eyes to getting yield on that, and then where can we contribute to something beyond just getting the yield. And I haven't really seen that too much either. So there's so many like new points there that like yeah, like people don't stake their ETH because like they're just like, well, there's not that much, I'm not really contributing to anything besides like getting a small percent, which there's maybe risk involved, but something is this important, it might change the game.
So that's the cool thing is Morpheus has extended this fair launch model to everyone else. So
Mm-hmm.
not only does it work for Morpheus, but every builder can create a
Mm,
subnet and have people stake towards
mm,
them. And it's an extension of the same model. You can stake or unstake your more tokens whenever you want. The only thing it's contributing is the yield from the protocol,
mm-hmm.
right? So you started with Ethereum, but it's effectively extended that model to anybody who wants to create an agent and wants to fund what they're building and lets the community decide on an individual basis. There's no votes in Morpheus.
Mm-hmm.
There is no DAO. You don't need a bureaucracy. You don't need a
Mm-hmm.
committee to decide these things. There's no application process. It's fully permissionless. And that's what I love is the individual. And in Morpheus, this is called atomic governance. It's an
Mm-hmm.
atomic governance model. The user can pick their model, their agent, what they want to stake towards. And those are all individual decisions. We don't have to suffer from the tragedy of the commons or some collectivist virus.
Mm-hmm.
You can own and direct all of your resources in any way you want, and you don't need permission from anybody else. And that's why I think this has grown so fast is you don't have to ask anybody. People are like, oh, can I build this in Morpheus? I was like, yeah, go ahead. I couldn't stop you if I wanted to. Like, there's smart contracts. Like you don't need
Yeah.
my permission, right? And people run multiple versions of the UI. There's different websites that all
Mm.
build explorers for Morpheus or show off builders or whatever they want to highlight. It's very much that Bitcoin ethos, right? That I remember from 2012 is
Mm-hmm.
like, everybody was able to put it in their own voice and contribute the way they wanted.
Yeah, it's incredible, David. It's a beautiful thing, and it's early days with AI agents, smart agents, and this model as well, because there's so much capital to that's sort of laying around that could be contributing to something important like this. That it's exciting to see. So I will leave a link to more.org for people who are interested in building, for developers, for the passive income people. for people that want to try agents or chats or anything. Open source, baby. It's all there to go try. And you said, as you said, we can't stop you from building because it's for everybody. And I hope we can get a larger percentage of people that realize the potential and the benefits that this has over centralized AI. And there might become, some kind of black swan day where they realize we better switch to something that actually has our best interest and is something that we own, and that we're not, our information isn't being sold off, or we're not being cut off. And open source and decentralized networks can do that for us.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think we have to convince people ideologically, right?
Mm-hmm.
People didn't pick the internet because they liked the open source nature of TCP/IP or HTTP. They
Mm-hmm.
liked it because they could just use it for free and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
need anybody's permission like AOL to operate inside a walled garden, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so low friction systems tend to win. Look at mobile phones. Android is like 80% of the global market,
Mm-hmm.
right? The average person globally has a $150 Android phone. And if you were using proprietary software, the license would cost more than the phone itself. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't make
Yeah.
sense. And so because Android was open source and free, it won the majority of the users, right? And so, we're going to have an open marketplace. Some enterprises and others will pick a proprietary solution for their own reasons, but I think most people will prefer the one that is free and open just because it's easier to use, right? Not and it will come with privacy, and it will come with ownership, and it will come with all these other things. But we have to compete on utility, not just on ideology, and I think that's how we win.
Amazing, David. Thank you so much for all the insights into AI, where we're at, where we're heading. I'll leave a link to all that, the Morpheus notes, the platform, every way that people can contribute and get involved and test out all these cool things that are coming out. And amazing to see the expansion outside to other digital assets as well. I think that's going to be huge for the people that are already in blockchain and digital assets. And would love to follow up. I know AI is growing so quickly, and the AI agent part, that by the next time we do the next video, my grandma might be having her email read and respond to, and it's going to make it so much easier as thousands of new agents come on and new people get involved in it. And I'm hoping they take the open source route, and I'm here to contribute and do that myself and preach the good word that this is a great way to own your information and use free open source software.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. Glad to
All
talk.
right. Thanks, David.
Bye, Ashton.